I'm Jean Claude Beyond Mystic, and welcome to this evening's Wacky Woo. With me, of course, is the Grand Master of Alchemy Secrets, Mr. Jay Weidner. You can find his work, of course. He is the producer of JFKX. You can find that at jfkx.org. Also, the producer of A Clockwork Shining, fascinating documentary. And you can find, finally, his YouTube channel here at Reality Check on YouTube. Jay, welcome back to the show. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I'm excited to have you on. I'm excited to talk about all things alchemy this evening with the audience members. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here tonight on this Sunday night show. We are triple casting right now on X, YouTube, and on Rumble. Hopefully, we can leave this episode on YouTube so that Jay can also simulcast on his channel here in a day or so. Jay, welcome back to the show, man. Since the last time you were on, we did the what's now very popular Cathar show. We had so many comments about that show, people wanting to learn more, and I thought it was fabulous. And at that time, you and I were saying how quickly and how strange our new world was becoming, and man, I think we missed the mark because it got a lot more quick and a lot more strange just in the last couple of weeks. What would be the highlights for you here in the last couple of weeks of how things are shaping up, Jay? What do you want to share with the audience?
I guess 33 years ago, I got offered a job at a fairly big radio station, FM, in Seattle, and I took the job. And I went on and immediately started, blasting out the woo, and caused freakouts. And it was a public radio station, so I got called in front of the board, and you can't say this on the radio, and we're going to fire you. And I'd always say, oh, so you don't believe in free speech? And they, oh, no, we believe in free speech. So, and I went through a lot of struggles. So now I'm now realizing that all that work is now paying off. And all the other people that have been speaking out for like 30 years, like me, are probably all very happy right now because the world caught up to us. And, I used to say that 30 years ago, I would go to a party and I would start talking to people. And eventually, 45 minutes into it, the host of the party would come and, Jay, maybe you should go. Maybe it's time for you to leave. You're scaring everybody. And now I get invited to parties where they all want me to talk. So I think that I'm just gratified that that the awakening is really truly happening, and it's happening much bigger than I ever thought, and much faster than I ever thought it would ever happen. And it's just really makes me happy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I went to this process of becoming a hermit for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, learning all this stuff. And it was a very self-limiting experience to where you kind of lose all your friends because, as you say, you don't get invited to parties. You scare them with all the information they don't want to know. And yet, in the last couple of years, it was even worse in a way because we were trying to get this information now during the war. I'll just say that way. And we were being censored for it, getting strikes on YouTube channels, getting deleted, and still this machine was very much held bent on suppressing the information. It very much feels now, since maybe last year leading up to the election, Elon Musk taking over Twitter, we seem to have a crack in the shield of the opposition here, so to speak, to where information now is coming through. And the more it's coming through, the more it's coming through. So we're building this huge momentum of knowledge that's surfacing to the surface. But at the same time, we're seeing that more and more viewers are waking up to the fact that, hey, they know something's wrong about this world. They know somebody's lied to them. They might not be able to point their finger to where that is, but they're now interested in listening to the Jay Weidners of the world and the JCs. So that's like, it's a culminoric effect, and I think that's accelerating. So I'm with you on that. Like that's a big demarcation. Another thing too, like on that same note, this USA ID scandal. So just came out a couple of weeks ago here. Doge is finding all this weird money that's being spent inappropriately in our world, and this one really speaks to the point of what you were saying. They were spending all of this money to prop up fake news organizations to disguise us into thinking what their version of reality was. And of course, in these types of stories, the puff stories about the government, the war issue, we were being told over and over again that the majority of Americans agree. See, these news outlets are all on the same page, and you guys are the minority. Well, it turns out all these fuckers had fake subscribers being paid by the government. They weren't real subscribers, and it weren't the majority of Americans following them or even believing or subscribing to their worldview. And on top of that, that was one side of it. But the other side of it, they were using that same money to downgrade, to put you in the sandbox, to delete our videos. And so it was very much a skewing of our worldview. And I think that's now what we're seeing is being corrected, and it's happening at a very, very fast pace. Can I ask you, before we go too far in the show tonight, we're going to talk about alchemy a little bit here, but where do you think, if you were to plot the next 3 to 6 months, how much more acceleration of this great awakening is happening? Would you plot it in 6 months, 3 months, in a year? What does that look like moving forward? Do we still have hurdles of maybe the cabal still trying to put in censorship? Here in Canada, Justin Trudeau just promised to double the money at the CBC, of course, to combat disinformation and misinformation, just 3 weeks probably before his prorogation and the election. So we see where they're going. They're still trying to clamp down. But so what do you see that struggle looking like here in the next couple of months, Jay?
So how this all works is that the best generals are generals who don't get involved in details. They present what they want, where the whole war is going to go, and then they let the majors and lieutenants and everybody make the decisions on the ground. The worst generals are ones who get involved in details, like in Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory, for instance. Right. Why didn't you shoot that guy? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? They should never be doing that. So about 20 years ago, I can't remember the guy's name, so forgive me, but it was a military strategist. He's a jet pilot. He came up with a counter strategy of this strategy, this top down, just tell them sort of what you want, let the details. And he came up with a counter strategy. And the counter strategy was to lay out so much chaos so that the generals don't know what to do. So that you force the generals to get involved in the details, then you've won. So our generals are the editors of the New York Times, Washington Post, CBS, ABC, NBC, CBC, all of those. Those are the generals. And so what Trump did, and I don't know where he learned this strategy, but he must have learned it over the last 4 years. He realized that he had to lay out as much stuff as fast as possible so that the generals could not lay out the details of what they wanted to the troops. Right. So right now you have the New York Times.com has like 150 stories where they used to have 10.
Right.
Okay, just 8 months ago, or 5 months ago, 3 months ago, it was 10 big stories, and that was it. And they concentrated on 10 different things, and then everybody would read that, and then the whole media would follow along and follow the direction of the generals. Now the generals don't know what to do. They're so overwhelmed with everything that they can't provide direction to the underlings. So now the underlings have to provide the direction for themselves, and they're not used to that. So They start making mistakes, and that's what's going on now. They're starting to make mistakes. They're starting to, do ridiculous protests in front of the State Department where they're singing protest songs from 1915, and they look like idiots. And besides, they're all federal workers. What are you doing in the middle of the day at a protest? How come you're not at work like the rest of us have to do? And so that's what's going on here, and it's going to keep. I can't prove this, but I would bet you that there's a staff of 6 or 7, 10 people that Trump has working for him. And the only thing they're designed to do is come up with something outrageous in 10 days. So that's all. Okay, in 10 days, we're going to drop this bomb. And then 11 days, this bomb. And 12 days, this bomb. And so every week they lay out all the bombs that are going to get thrown. And they're not really serious so much about the policies as they are and just causing as much chaos on the other side as possible. And it's working. It's a brilliant strategy. The problem with it is that you have to keep it up. You can't let go for a second, because the minute you give them time to regroup, it's going to be chaos. So, Trump brings up the Panama Canal, and so they start responding to that. But he's already got 5 different things after that. They're still back there talking about the Panama Canal, and nobody cares about the Panama Canal anymore. We're off to all this other stuff. So he's doing the same thing with Canada and Greenland. But I will tell you this: I know of some Trump insiders, and he's very serious about Canada, and he's very serious about Greenland, and he's very serious about the Panama Canal. And he's trying to build a hermetically sealed continent. First thing he does is take control of the southern border. Then he starts, elbowing Trudeau into, and then he does the tariffs. Canada's going to have to succumb eventually to it, because they're not going to be able. We're their biggest trading partner, and I think he's intent on. Quebec will probably be a separate country. But I think that, I know the maritime provinces would like to join. I know Alberta would like to join. I think even Manitoba, Saskatchewan probably would like to join too. So he's already got, and Canada's constitution allows them to break off. They can, provinces can break away from the central government. So Trump knows all this, and he's moving fast, and he's going to create a hermetically sealed country that is going to be impervious to long-term missiles or invasion of any kind. And then he's going to bring home all the manufacturing and the semiconductors. We're all coming back here now. I believe that's one of the reasons that he wants Greenland, so he can use it as a data center place, because it's so cold there. They don't. 90% of the energy in a data center is air conditioning, because the equipment is so hot. But if you move it to Greenland, you got all the cool air you need, and even Canada. And I would look for all sorts of political machinations between the U.S. and Canada over the next year, until Canada finally succumbs. I hate to say it, because I kind of like you guys being separate from us, but
we kind of like that too. But at the same time, I mean, I
don't think there's anything you can do to stop it. I really don't. I think all of this was thought up over the 4 years that he was gone.
Well, I'd like to speak to you about that, because this whole thing, he said, there's a team to make sure there's a bomb that comes off, every 10 days or whatever, like the big plan. Since he's taken an office, that's the strategy. We see it out every day. The mainstream news is telling us that he's chaotic and he's a madman. We can't deal with it. But no, there's a strategy at play here. And like you said, he's not taking his foot off the gas pedal. And in some cases, whether it's some of the investigations from Doge or some of the other moves he's made, I was like, there's no way those guys came out with that rollout plan in a couple of weeks since the inauguration. This has been done for 4 years. It means that they had access to all of this. And, we've been saying this for a number of times on the show. You've repeated it yourself on your show. Like, they have it all. And it was true. And there was something that was being placed in front of us as a movie while this was being prepared in the background. Now we're just finally seeing the rollout. They're not preparing this just because they won the election. Something very different happened. Now, whether or not Trump was CIC for the last 4 years and we had the fake president running of the corporation, today, as we're looking at this on February 23, how would you describe that last 4 years? How, are you game to say what you think?
I think that having Biden steal the election in 2020 was probably the best thing that ever happened to us. We got to see the contrast. It was really obvious. And it gave Trump's, was a chess champion in his 20s, like Stanley Kubrick. And the chess mind is a completely different kind of mind than other minds. The chess mind is always 10 steps ahead, always thinking what you're going to do 15 steps from now. And so you gave Trump 4 years to actually think about all this. he's just going to come in like bull you right over, and that's what he's doing, and he's not going to stop. And you're going to start seeing crack ups on the opposite side now,
Yeah.
because here's the thing: they can't talk to each other. Their phones are tapped. Clearly, the criminal defense attorney is the #1 search term in DC on Google. So
Right.
clearly, there's criminal activity going on.
Mhm.
And a lot of these people were probably told by the people over them, "Don't worry, no, you're never going to get caught. Um, just go ahead and do it." And they did it, and now they're like, "Hey, I'm going to get caught. I'm squealing on you."
Yeah.
And so now nobody can talk to each other because they're all afraid. Are you a FBI, or are you watching me and taking down everything I'm saying? And so it's over. I mean, it's basically over. It will be. Um, It'll fall all apart here really soon, and that's part of this military strategy, to create
Yeah.
as much chaos. So the enemy is shooting into the woods, and the people they're shooting at left 2 days ago,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But so you're just making one mistake after another, and that's what you're seeing. The mistakes will then turn into anger, and then the anger will then turn into complete defeat.
Mm.
And that's where it's headed, and there's no way turning back. Anyone who thinks that it's going to stop is wrong. These people are so far ahead of everybody else that it's just going to be, um, it's going to be amazing, actually.
It's already fun to watch. And like you
It
say,
is.
like just going back to the chess analogy, like it looks like he's got them all in checkmate. And if they can't move, like now they can't even exercise their communications between each other because it would make it worse. So there's like it's a compounding effect, and it's very fascinating to see. But going back to what you just said, it goes to anger and then to all of these mistakes and the full surrender. Do you see some type of, I'll call it a visual mainstream acknowledgement of surrender? Right now, they're kicking back. They're saying, "Oh, Elon Musk has big balls, and he shouldn't be doing this, and he's not running the country. He's not elected." And so there's a little bit of fight back. At what point, like, are you seeing months? Or does it take a year to see some serious major capitulations? What do you see?
No, this is going like I would have said, a month ago that this would take a year or 2 years
Okay,
probably, but now,
it's
no, the
fast.
strategy is so brilliant that they're just running over everybody and everything, and nobody knows how to respond. Um, Doge is just bowling over everything. They're going to pull $1 trillion out of the budget. He's going to balance the budget probably in next March, not this coming March, but a year from March. He's going to balance the budget. That's going to throw the 2026 elections into the Republicans' hands, because he finally balanced the budget and stopped the spending like a drunken sailor crap. And so this is not a 2 year strategy. This is I would say 8 to 12 year strategy, and it is designed to retake back America. It is the last time this happened was Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1932. The time before that was Abraham Lincoln in 1860, and the time before that was the Revolutionary War in the 1780s. So every 80 years, right on time, the Uranus orbit happens. And it takes 80 years for Uranus to go around one time. And every 80 years, we have a gigantic revolution. So the last first turning was 1945, and it's now 2025. So it's exactly 80 years since the last first turning. And now we're in the transition from the fourth turning, which we just are going out of, into the new first turning, which is like a golden age. Just like 1945 to 1965 was a golden age for America. And I was a kid and I lived through it, and it was. This one is also going to be a golden age. And in this golden age, you're not even going to believe what's going to happen. The,
Right.
uh, the whole entire federal government is going to be taken over by AI. 90% of the non-military people are going to be gone. And the only people that will be left will be really high thinking people. All the rest of the jobs are going to be AI. And then that's going to spread down into the corporate world. And then that's going to spread down into all the state governments and the provincial governments. And then we're going to have a massive unemployment problem. And that's coming like really fast. The most interesting thing about that is that most of the jobs that are about to be lost are women's jobs. They're clerical. They're like working in offices and filing and putting things away and organizing things. That's gone. AI will do that right away. So the only jobs that are going to be left are going to be like mechanics, plumbers, engineers, doctors, nurses, carpenters, that kind of thing. And so we're going to see this like weird reversal where the standard traditional household is going to come back. Women aren't going to be able to find work as easily. And all of a sudden, the idea of having your husband who's a plumber making good money, working all day, and you stay home and raise the kids is going to become more and more appealing. And and women should be find this appealing because you're free from the corporate slavery. That's all feminism really was a surrender to women to the corporate bureaucracy, to the corporate world, to becoming slaves to the corporation. And then they find out that the corporation has no loyalty to you. As soon as you're 55, you're gone. Get out of here. I'm going to hire somebody half as cheap, twice as cheap as you, and 30 years younger. And so the world is rapidly changing. And it's all part of this thing of us moving from the Kali Yuga to the Dwapara Yuga.
Okay, don't go too fast. You're preceding me. Hold on.
Okay. So anyway, that's what's going on, I believe. And the technology also is moving so rapidly that you're not even going to be able to recognize what's going on here really soon. And everything from AI to medical technologies, which are going to actually be able to grow organs inside your body and replace them. And this is all done already. It just hasn't been released yet. And I believe that Trump choosing a high-tech CEO to be head of the Navy is very important because a lot of this high technology is being kept secret by the Navy. And I believe they're going to start releasing it through corporations. So it looks like the pedigree is through the corporation. So the Navy never has to answer the question of why did you hang on to this so long, right? And that's what they're afraid of. So they're going to slowly, not slowly, over the next 4 years, hundreds of new, with quotes, inventions and technologies are going to be released through private corporations that look like they have a pedigree, so that they can explain the thing away. So
that's where we're going to start to see the free energy devices and all this stuff.
All of it's going to start coming out. It's already coming out.
The dividends of
Rendell has got free energy thing. He's from the Navy. Once you start looking into it, it's like, holy crap, what has the Navy been looking into for the last few years? And they are the premier.
They were consorting with extraterrestrials, Jay.
They have been, actually.
Exactly.
But so I'm really optimistic. I think we're right on the edge of this amazing thing that's about to happen, and we should all, cheer it on. And there's a lot of danger too ahead of us, and we have to be worried about that. But if we can hermetically seal off North America from the world and just bring everything home, it could be a pretty good situation.
It's the chrysalis metaphor that Cliff High was using on the Substack to where we're cocooning in order to retransform, right? We're in that.
Oh, I hadn't read that. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, it's a really good Substack, guys, if you haven't seen it. On that note, too, Cliff is in the chat. Everybody's saying hello. And somebody said, hey, I can't wait to read Cliff High's new book. The book is out now, guys. The link is on his Twitter. The subject or the title of his new book is Brotherhood of the Afflicted. It's available.
I'm a quarter of the way through it.
It's available now on the Kindle edition. I just bought it yesterday, so I'm looking forward to reading it. He had sent me a few snippets along the way as he was writing it. It sounds absolutely fascinating. So, guys, go check it out. You can find the link on his Twitter, or, of course, you can just type that into Amazon and find that link. Just going back quickly to AI. the big changes. I wanted to bring up this news story here. Elon Musk just the other day too, again, leading into what you're saying, he's asking all federal public employees to kind of let them know what they've done in the last week. They have 48 hours to give him a report. Otherwise, they're going to get fired. So all those guys who are sitting there twiddling their thumbs for all these years, that's about to come to an end. So it's just another indication here of how fast they're moving. And Trump asked him the other day, he said, Elon Musk is a great guy, but I wish he'd go a little bit harder on what he's already doing. So can you imagine the mainstream news having a fit about that? The other thing you mentioned, which was just interesting, was all these cycles of time of revolutions going back, and you iterated quite a few. But I want to maybe take the larger view of that now and start talking about the yugas of time. This is the bigger, large view. Of course, we're looking at the 24,000 year cycle. And you just did a series, a 3-part series with Sheldon Moore on your YouTube channel. So guys, I invite you to go check that out. Reality Check on YouTube, Alchemy and the Eastern Traditions, part 1, 2, and 3. I'm restarting part 2. I've watched part 1 twice. I took a few slide shots from part 1. I want to talk about this here tonight. A big thank you to Sheldon Moore and his research. I'd love to have him on the show. Fabulous guy, very well learned. It absolutely blew my mind. So I asked Jay, hey, can you come on? Let's start sharing some of this stuff with our audience members. So let's start here, Jay. Explain to the audience member, we've done this, you and I, quite a few times before, but there's new people starting to watch the show. And I want them to understand now that what they're seeing, you just mentioned the smaller iterations of revolutions and these cycles of times on the planet, but really there's something much, much bigger going on. And when Trump says we're entering a golden age, there's much more to that story than meets the eye. So let's start here with the cycles of times, the yugas. Explain the concept of this and where we are now and why you think we are where we are now, Jay.
Well, first I was just going to say, Sheldon and I have a slight disagreement on what creates the Yuga system. He thinks that we're in a trinary orbit and that we have a brown dwarf pulling on us, and that when it comes closer, we go into the golden age. When it pulls out, we go into the dark age. I believe that actually it's the oscillation of the solar system going up and down through the edge of the galaxy. And when we come to the position where we're right in the middle of the plate of the material of the plane of the galaxy, that's the Kali Yuga, because the etheric energies coming from the center of the galaxy are blocked during that time period. And that as we start rising above, which we are right now, over the top of all that material plane, we start receiving more and more of this etheric energy. The proof of that is like around 2000 or so, the sun went from yellow to white. And we were just coming out the edge of the galaxy at that moment. And so, and the sun is brighter than ever right now. I mean, I can barely stand it. And I don't know if it's everybody else. I live at 8,000 feet, so I don't know if it's just because I live at such a high altitude. But man, I went out today and it was like so bright outside that I had to go back in. And I couldn't even see the sun. All I saw was just a mass of white up in the sky, right? You couldn't even actually see the round sun hardly. So now we are in the ascending stage of this Yuga cycle. And that means that every day everything's just going to get better and better and better and easier and easier. And we're going to get more and more intelligent, and we're going to get more spiritual, and we're going to understand who we are. And we're just at the beginning of it. I mean, we still have 3 yugas to go before we start the descent phase. And this is, based on a Yukteswar, who's a yogi that actually sent, what's his name, to America, because he thought that America, the west coast of America, was where the spiritual rebirth was going to happen. And so he had this Yuga cycle, and basically saying that we came out of the Kali Yuga around 300 years ago, around 1700. And that's right when the Enlightenment happened, Martin Luther, the Reformation, the Renaissance, not the Renaissance, but the post-Renaissance. And you can kind of, your history, you can kind of go back and say, yeah, something definitely happened. We went from living in little small villages where we only knew 20 or 30 people our whole life to now traveling by ship around the world and exploring the world, and then eventually moving from our countries to other countries, and then the books were invented and learning got increased, and it's just been this one exponential wave after another of advances. And now we're in the Dwapara Yuga, and you can just feel it. You can just feel that there's something changing, and you can feel, especially in the last month or so, that something weird is happening. And what it is that we're being fed all this energy from the galactic center, which is what my 2 books are about, by the way, and that we are rapidly changing and moving into a whole nother world, which is what the Great Awakening is about. And what I try to do with my series Alchemy and the Eastern Traditions was, I now, Sheldon and I had several conversations, and we said, now it's time to show that the traditions of the East and the traditions of the West are very, very interconnected, and they're not disparate entities at all, and that the Gnostic tradition is influenced by Buddha tradition, and then consequently the Buddhist tradition is influenced by the Gnostic tradition. And so these things are all working their way out in a kind of a cocktail, where we're now beginning to understand that the personal transmutation of the human being in alchemy is exactly the same as the personal transmutation of the Tibetan tradition and the Indian tradition, and frankly, the shamanic traditions from Peru and Mexico and Africa and all over the world. And basically, it's how to connect to the plasma universe, or or prana, chi are all plasma, and plasma is everywhere. And once we learn how to absorb plasma into our bodies, we get health, we get enlightenment, and we get all sorts of other benefits. And so what we showed is that all of the sacred sites that have rock, Stonehenge, or the one that's in Canada, are all at Göbekli Tepe, are all astronomical markers. And what they're looking for is eclipses, both solar and lunar eclipses. And the reason that is because during an eclipse, there's a break in the plasma flow that's coming. The blockage of the planets and the moon and the sun cause a momentary break, where if you're aware of that, you can grab hold of that and take it and run with it. And I told a story of, I'm going to forget his name now. Allais, yeah, I think his name was Allais. He was a French astronomer, and he was in the Paris Observatory watching the pendulum experiments that show the gravitational movement of the Earth. And it was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden the pendulum started gyrating wildly for just, 10, 15 seconds. And he's like, what?
Do you mean Jacques Vallée?
No,
Jacques
not
Vallée?
not ballet.
No.
His name was Allais. I
Allais.
can't remember how it's spelled,
Okay.
but he was a French scientist. Anyway, he went out to go to lunch, a couple hours later, and somebody at the restaurant goes, "Hey, what did you think about the total eclipse?" And he goes, "Oh, I forgot all about it." He goes, "Oh," and then he realized that the total eclipse had happened exactly when the pendulum started gyrating wildly. And because there was a break in the field for that brief moment. And that's what we basically talk about, is how alchemy is the use of the world around us to cause an inner reflection inside us that causes a change and a transmutation. Not to say that you can't transmute elements. You can. Ken Schwartz has proven beyond any doubt that Moxie fusion can cause elements to be created out of virtually nothing: gold and silver and lead and all sorts of things. So there is many aspects to alchemy, But alchemy basically comes from Egypt. Egypt meant Alchem. That's what was the name of Egypt back in the old days, which meant the dark lands or the dark soil, because of the alluvial soils that come down the Nile River. And so when I wanted to understand what alchemy was, after reading all these obscure books and still not understanding it, about 25 years ago, I began saying, I think I have to go back to Egypt to find out what alchemy is, because that's where it started, as far
Right.
as I knew. I now know it was also in Tibet and in India. But so I went back, and then I found Christopher Dunn's book on the Great Pyramid as a plasma generator. And then I knew what I was dealing with. I now knew that what the Egyptians were doing was creating a huge plasma field around Cairo, which wasn't called Cairo then, and this was bringing health, and probably were able to transmute metals with it, and then, as I started looking, I realized, well, that's what the great cathedrals were. They weren't places where you went to go worship, although you could if you wanted to. They were places where you went to heal.
Right.
So the doors were open 24/7 in the great cathedrals of Europe. And so you could go in there at 2 in the morning and you would find 6 or 7 people, probably near death, in the pews being helped by, workers who were helping them heal them. But they're trying to bring down the etheric energy through the steeples down into the base of the cathedral, and that would cause people to feel better and get better. And of course, they had a labyrinth on the floor, so you would walk the labyrinth and you just sit there and absorb all this etheric energy. All of these things were necessary only in the Kali Yuga. Outside the Kali Yuga, you don't need to build your cathedrals or your pyramids or anything, because you've already got this etheric energy coming in through you. You just have to know how to absorb it and how to use it to your advantage.
That's fascinating, and it ties in all of these sacred sites to the
Yeah.
research that Graham Hancock is doing. He's looking, of course, for this ancient civilizations that would have left all of these bread crumbs and clues that we are looking for now.
Yep.
Um, Going back to these sacred sites, do you think at this point, because in that part one that you recorded with Sheldon, you were looking at the year 2024 and 2025, debating. Okay, explain that time marker here. So we're in this new Dwapara Yuga now, but what was that year all about? Explain that to the audience.
So the Kala Chakra is a manuscript from India and Tibet, and it describes what happens through the Yuga system. And if you add up the number of years that we've been in the Kali Yuga, because it also, those years are divided into pieces
Sections,
where
yeah.
each piece has a different quality. We should be moving into this mass enlightenment predicted by many yogis in 2025, in 2026, but mostly 2025. And it's all part of this Yuga counting system that we are both follow. And so I think that I think we're going to feel it. I think we're going to really feel it from now on.
I think many people are already feeling it, like
I
just
do
these
too. And
energies from space, people not sleeping, feeling like they're on a live wire. And on top of that, we're seeing the other side of the equation put even more energy now to kind of stop this momentum. If you look at the last 4 years, the things they put in your arm, the damage it could have done to your nervous system, to your vagus nerve system, all of this, presumably to stop what is unstoppable. But it very much feels like we're in it now. What are the clues that you think, other than the 3D stuff we see on the news, how are you feeling it also, Jay?
well, I'm feeling pretty good about it all. I've had a really I feel like I'm getting healthier and I'm getting more wise, and my optimism is growing. And I just want to say one thing. I really, the only thing that I get irritated about is that we did those 3 shows and really, went deep into the whole thing. And then right after we got done, David Wilcock went and did a whole show taking all of our stuff without any attribution and saying that he has evidence that 2025 is the big year and I was horrified by it. I mean,
Wow.
if you're standing on the shoulders of giants, you can give attribution.
Right.
Okay. Sheldon Moore spent like decades looking into this, and so have I. And to just blow us off and act like he came up with it, it's detestable. I'm sorry. I don't want to trash anybody, but when I saw him do it, I was like, dude, you are such a ripoff.
Yeah.
And now I know he watches my show. I wasn't sure, but now I know he does.
Right.
But at least say where you got the information from. You're right. I mean, that is, that's just what a good researcher is supposed to do. But he
And
did.
can we talk about the fact too that because these energies are changing and people are also waking up, we are going to be less prone to maybe following some of the false prophets we were all following over the last number of years, who
Yeah.
had maybe cherry picked a lot of this information and without having the source material or understanding the source material kind of made it their own and led a lot of people astray, whether that's what the light body is or the rainbow body is or what ascension actually means. Maybe now is the time that we can correct course for all of that. Are you confident with that process also?
I am. I think that, I think that the people that are real appear real now. I think we're beginning to tell who isn't real. You
Right.
know, again, David Wilcock is does is didn't has not looked into Norbu Namkai's writings in on Tibetan Buddhism and the light body. He thinks that you can achieve light body while you're alive. You cannot achieve light body when you're alive. Okay, light body is a planned on death. The people that achieve light body plan for even the moment of their death so that they are already spiritually ready to become light, to turn their pineal gland into light. And that deteriorates the entire body. We know people have gone to see people who have turned into light bodies, their teeth, their fingernails, and some dust is left behind. That's it. All right. But there's definitely proof that it's them. It's their teeth. I mean, you can tell by the
Mhm.
dental work and all the stuff that they had. And so what we have is a tradition that goes back before the Kali Yuga, where we absorb prana, chi, plasma, whatever you want to call it, until we're so full of this light that we turn to light ourselves. And that experience kills us. All right. But it's a wonderful experience. So don't get me wrong. So, yeah, the problem with people like David Wilcock is they fold in scholarly research into their own BS, but only in a half-ass way. And so the disinformation, and he gets 300,000 views. I get, 5,000 if I'm lucky, right?
Right.
Maybe with your stuff, I get more, but with my own, I'm lucky to get 10,000 views. So, and so I think we have to now stand up and correct these guys who are giving out the false information, taking real information and turning it into their BS. And I'm going to start calling people out on it. I'm really done with it. And it's just, we have to police ourselves. We now
Right.
realize through the Corey Good BS that we can't rely on anybody to police us but us.
Right.
And so when people like David Wilcock put out their stuff and then claim that it's theirs, and Sheldon Moore, before we did the series, actually told me that get ready for David Wilcock to rip all this stuff off. I was like, really? Apparently they knew each other years ago and it happened before. So, David Wilcock, just know that you're going to get called out when you use other people's work.
Fascinating. Let's talk about some of the challenges of this waking up process. So earlier you said we're moving into this golden age. Trump has this strategy where he can't let his foot off the gas pedal here with all the bombs that are coming out, so that they don't regroup, so to speak. We'll leave that part aside for now, but I want to talk about us individually as we're moving towards this new energy. We're moving towards this enlightenment, and at every various stage I found in my life, and I want you to explain this for the audience members, where I was about to up level to new understandings, new knowings, a new higher field of view, I felt like I was always challenged. And those came in different forms of maybe past people from my past life trying to bring me back into old ways of thinkings or old jobs that went nowhere, with promise of money, as opposed to doing what I was about to do here on YouTube. So can we talk about the archonic threat and how in this yuga of time, and specifically in the Kali yuga, we are very much vulnerable when we start shining our light to these entities here whose job it is to kind of thwart that evolution for humanity. So give us a little bit of backdrop on the archons, and then also talk about advice moving forward here as we enlighten ourselves and we get closer and closer to these new up levelings, how we have to watch out for these detractors, to say the least. Jay.
Yeah, the archons are, spiritual entities that they like to tell you how bad you are. You got that voice in your head that's like, you're a bad person, you're ugly, you're not good, you were wrong to people, and maybe you were wrong to people, but everybody makes mistakes. So what the archons like to do is take that one mistake you made and then just repeat it over and over in your head until you're literally driven insane. And they're probably the demons from Christianity also,
Mm,
and they I, I I knew this woman. She had a near death experience. She fainted and hit her head on the toilet in the bathroom, and literally died right on the spot. And they revived her like an hour later or something at the hospital, but she died. And she said that she went up the tunnel that you go into, which is the filament that connects your body to the larger plasma cloud, the Kordylewski cloud, and she went up into the plasma cloud, and the first thing that she was confronted with was this room full of short, dark, faceless entities. And the entities would take her past life that she just lived and then take out all the bad stuff and tell her how bad she is. How bad you're a terrible person. You're bad. You're bad. Well, you did that to that person. You did that to that. And so she finally, after about a few minutes of this, started arguing back, which is really smart. That's what you want to do with an archon. Say, no, I wasn't. I didn't do that. No, I didn't do that. I'm not that person. What are you talking about? Why are you a liar? And the archons eventually gave up on her, in which she then had a very happy near death experience until she had to come back. And so that's what they do. They try to denigrate you. And we all have that voice in our head that, if you're not careful, will push you towards delusion. And I've had it happen to me. So one time, not that long ago either, a few years ago, I had myself talked into an illusion, and I was about to act on it, and I pulled out of it at the last second. And then I realized later that if I had acted on my false illusion, it would have been really bad for me. It would have been like devastating. But I didn't. I pulled back at the last. Wait a minute, is this really real? And then I realized, oh, it isn't real. It's just my imagination or voices in my head telling me that this is what's happening. And so, what you have to do with the archons is, when you hear that voice in your head going, "You're a bad person. You're dumb. You're stupid. You're ugly," you just turn around and go, "Will you get them
F
out
off.
of here?" Right?
Right.
And then they go, and they do. If you command them to leave, they will leave. They do not want. They don't even want to be discovered. They want you to think it's you telling
Mhm.
you that you're that way. And then when you finally realize that it's not you, it's this outside entity telling you it, and that you discover that, then they don't like it and they run. And you have to do things. You've got to create your home has to be a place that's archon resistant. All
Mhm.
right. So you come to my house and I've got tonkas. all over the place. I've got art everywhere. I've got incense burning. I've got really, really ambient music going. They can't get in because I won't let them in. And when
They hate the joy and harmony, right?
that's right,
So
they hate
if
it.
you're in that frequency, they're very
Yep.
hard for them to come in.
And then
Um,
I like to point out to people who I see are starting to listen to archons. I said, wait a minute, do you really think that? Is that what you really think? Are you hearing a voice in your head telling you that? And almost always I go, God, yeah, I am. How did you know that? Right? And I
yeah,
was like, yeah, because your archons are coming after you.
right,
But I think as we go into the Dwapara Yuga, the archons are going to go away. I think they're already starting to go away. And we're going to be able to recognize archonic influences. So you see somebody on TV. Here's my thing. If somebody looks like a demon, they probably are.
right.
Oh, that's all I'm going to say. So when I'm watching people on TV, especially politicians, I'm not going to say who, I look at them and go, man, that guy is a ghoul. That guy is demonic. And then
Right,
I realize, holy crap, he really
right,
is demonic,
right,
right? And so at that point, you're able to discern who's who and what you want to be with and who you want to be with, and it's probably best to keep your number of people that you interact with to a limited degree. I mean,
right,
because you never know when you're going to let somebody in who might be doing something that you're not going to like,
right.
and so I keep the number of people in my intimate life to under 10.
Yeah,
And I've already gone through them and examined them, and I understand that they're not going to betray me and they're not going to lie to me, and so then I let them in. But I'm a
right,
stoic, and so I stay quiet most of the time and just observe. But I believe we're going to be able to start understanding the demonic archonic influence on us. I did a show on Reality Check. I interviewed, I can't remember his name now, but he was really interesting. And he worked in a mental institution as a psychologist. And he began believing that when the people in the institution said that they had a demon in them, that it was true. Whereas all the other guys would say, it's bullshit. There's no demon in him. He's just crazy and a bad upbringing. Well, one day he got alone with one of these people who claimed they had a demon in him, and he asked to talk to the demon. And the demon came forward and he said, why do you do this? And he goes, I do it because this guy is such an idiot that he believes me when I tell him he's ugly, he's stupid. And I can't believe he believes me.
because he let me. Yeah.
Exactly. And so
Mm.
that's actually the answer is as soon as you get that voice coming in you, halt everything and go, no, what's going on here,
Yeah,
and do a self-examination of it. But again, I do believe these influences are going to go away, and so you get a guy like Zelensky in Ukraine, and you can clearly see this guy's like demonically possessed, if not also a horrible drug addict, and and you can see he's getting frustrated because everybody can see who he is now, and
yeah,
he's getting angry.
yeah.
And
It's
just
funny because you and I were pointing that out many years ago, and it didn't even make a dent. Most people didn't want to see it. They didn't want to see his old videos of his old performances and all that stuff. No, he couldn't. Now, like I'm seeing normies tell me and show me these videos. I'm like, wow, yeah, we're seeing the demons for who they are. I wanted to bring this up too. First of all, thank you. You gave a lot of great advice there, and I want to redirect you on one, making your temple clean. But before I do that, just going back to these yugas of times and these archons, it appears, if I understood correctly from your talk with Sheldon, that these archons are very much a manifestation of these lower energies that people who are into the higher yugas of time, the golden age, don't have to deal with that. So it's a lot easier to become enlightened when you're at the higher end of that spectrum than when we are here in the muck. So we have to be gentle and kind to ourselves and kind of pat ourselves on the back a little bit here, because it wasn't easy. This is really the school of hard knocks in every way, shape, or form. Did I get that correctly? That they're mostly in these lower
yeah,
yugas of time? Okay.
Yeah, and so we've just come out of the Kali Yuga, which is the most horrible time of the entire Yuga cycle, and the horrors of the Kali Yuga are just so incredible, and so now that we're just barely out of it, we're suffering from really the only hangover that you have in the entire Yuga system. It happens right now, right this time, right when you're coming out, because we remember what happened to us. We remember what happened to our ancestors, and remember all the horrible wars and the torture
Right.
and everything that just happened, the genocides. And we're just like shaking. We got PTSD, um, and now that is starting to ebb slowly. That starts to ebb. And I think once that begins going away, you're going to see fentanyl go away, and heroin and alcoholism, and all of it's just going to start disappearing
Hmm.
because we're just going to calm down. We're using substances to calm ourselves down because we have this PTSD hangover from the Kali Yuga, and the nightmares were real. I mean, they were, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
there's no underplaying it.
Mm.
So right now we are in a position where I think it's just going to get better and better. And not going to be perfect. There's going to be collapses, currency collapses, and all sorts of things that are going to
Well, there's a
happen.
lot of unintended consequences also to these big changes, and I think this is where you and Cliff High, when you guys say, "Hey, strive to survive 2025,"
Yeah.
you don't mean that lightly. There's a lot of breakage and a lot of change, and in that change, there's risk to everyone if you don't see that change coming, and if you haven't inoculated yourself. You just mentioned all the people losing their jobs to the AI. They're going to have to reboot, retool, and all that. But there's many more changes, including the financial system, and so we just have to stay aware and very vigilant as all of this is happening. We can enjoy the show of the bombs going off every day, but at the same time, we kind of have to work ourselves to plot where we want to go to kind of see some of these changes ahead of time. This is why the remote viewers are interesting. This is why your work is interesting. Cliff High's Webbot data is interesting. It's giving us tools, astrology also, and tarot to some extent. It's giving us tool to better navigate all this stuff. So this is the time where all of those um, technologies and sciences are really, really important to humanity to not put on the side, to really pay attention to, because we are in that weird kind of transition path to, yeah, there's danger all around us right now, and not necessarily directed at us, but simply because of the inherent changes and the unintended consequences. Do you want to speak to that a little bit and what you see and maybe some of those bigger challenges might be this year, Ajay?
Well, I saw an interview with Eric Weinstein. He's a physicist, and he said that teaching physics in college right now is useless because all of the physics is all locked up in secret, and we really don't know what the physics are anymore. So he
Right.
thought the whole thing was kind of silly and ridiculous. I have to agree with that.
Right.
And so I think what's going to happen is that we're going to get these secrets are going to get released, and as they get released, our view of physics is going to be altered incredibly, and so that I think is going to be the biggest thing that happens over the next few years, is this release of all this data that has been built up for 70, 80 years or so.
Yeah.
And Eric Weinstein himself doesn't even know what it is. He can surmise and he can guess, but he doesn't know because he's not an insider either. So that's what I would look for, is incredible releases of data and information. And I would look for um, not free energy. It's not really free. The machines run down and you have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have parts replaced and all that. But cheap energy is coming. And I think also our ability to move around the planet is about to alter, where you're going to be able to go several thousand miles in like an hour,
Right.
and and it's all going to be run by AI, and so we're headed towards this world that we can't uh, even begin to guess.
It's why says Weinstein blocked me on X. He won't talk to me.
Oh, I bet
Well,
he hates you.
well, Cliff's been calling him out for a number of years. Although he
Yeah,
did
well,
Weinstein,
Weinstein's a woke
yeah,
idiot.
he
I'm
did
sorry.
somewhat come back on the COVID stuff a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, and I think now in terms of academia, he's pointing out the fallacies of all that, of the Einstein model, and not knowing what the real model is. But I
No,
remember
he doesn't.
there was another Substack from Cliff saying, "Hey, if you're in engineering right now and you're in these sciences at school and they can't explain the UFOs or they can't explain remote viewing, you're in the wrong school because you don't have an explanation for your own reality." And I think that's the exciting part of all of this too. Maybe finally we get to understand how this place actually works, and the true physics of it all. That's
Yeah,
very fascinating.
yeah,
Okay, so going back to one of the things you said with respect to the archons, you mentioned keeping your house like a serene place, joy field. You have all these protection in the house as well, but mostly you're working on the frequency field. But
yeah.
that is also important now to the body. Now you've shared with us too, like you're a bodybuilder, you take care of your body, you try to eat well, you've removed the GMO from your diet, the toothpaste with the fluoride many years ago. Many people are on that track now of trying to improve and having a better body. What do you say right now is changing also, and why do you feel that you're becoming healthier now? And what advice can you give to people also to make that temple as strong as possible, also to push away those archons in this transition of time, Jay?
Yeah, well, I got colon cancer probably just about the same time that Cliff did.
Yeah,
And it was really a wake up call to me because I'd been kind of healthy pretty much my whole life. And I was really shocked that I had it. And then I went and I was ill for about 5.5 years after I got the cancer. I had one constant thing after another. I was really getting tired of it all, and even contemplating how I would end it all. Right, like I was going to dig a hole and then go out on a really cold night and with a bottle of whiskey and drink it and then die in the cold. Right, that's
yeah,
how sick I was. And then suddenly I just decided, you know what? I'm not going to let this happen to me. And I began really concentrating on getting better. And I have to say, the C60 really helped. And I invented a drink that I take every day now. It's like probably $15 for 16-ounce glass, but I don't care anymore. And we have,
right.
and one day I'm going to go on my show and make my drink for everybody so they can see, because it took
Cool.
literally years of research to find out how to put everything into this drink. And I had AI do a whole analysis of my drink and came out, man, this is the best drink ever.
Cool.
Yeah. So
Wow.
anyway, then I started doing yoga again and Tai Chi and meditation and lifting weights and hiking every day. And I got myself a dog to go hiking with me. And I felt the transformation just happen. And I think, 90% attitude, of course, but I think that it's really important, to have certain kinds of daily rules and routines. So
Yeah,
I believe that you should spend an hour a day exercising, an hour a day meditating, and an hour a day tackling a problem, a mental problem that's difficult for you. So I think you should do that every day. And I
for
think
sure.
that yeah, you need to spread beauty all around your house because the archons hate beauty. And so have beauty everywhere and have beautiful music playing and all of that. And eat right, eat organic and take the supplements that you need to take and keep calm. That's the best thing. Don't let the world rattle you.
Right.
Let's just stay calm. And, it's been a gratifying turnaround. I don't know how long. I'm going to knock on wood now. Every time I talk about my health, I knock on wood, because I've been there and I've been into the darkest of the dark, and I don't want to go back. I will release that drink at one point. I'm going to release it.
You
Oh, yeah.
created quite a stir in the chat. They're all like, "I want the recipe." Okay, well, I'll have you back on too when you want to
Okay.
discuss it, and
We'll do the
we can
drink.
show those ingredients online. I'd love to see the Substack. Sorry, the AI decode of your ingredients also, if you want to share
Yeah.
that. I know Cliff is looking at AI to bring different compounds together also for different concoctions that he's working on now. You spoke about C60. Let's hear what Ken Schwartz has to say. Ken is also going to be joining us in Ottawa for the conference, but let's hear what he has to say here for us tonight.
Hi there, this is Ken with C60 Power. I'm hanging out tonight, tuned in to the Wacky Woo Show with Jean Claude, and I've got some exciting news. C60 Power will be an exhibitor at the oncoming Beyond Mystic Conference in Ottawa, Canada on March the 14th, 15th, and 16th. I can't wait to meet you all in person, so be sure to stop by and say hi and learn more about how C60 can supercharge your health. And here's the best part. We're extending the 20% off deal on all C60 gummies. Just use the code WACKYWOO at checkout on www.shopc60.com. See you there.
All right. Thanks, Ken. And yes, I see you there in Ottawa. And guys, yes, of course, if you don't already know, Jay will be joining us in Ottawa also for the conference in March. His keynote speech, of course, is going to be on alchemy. So if you're loving the conversation here tonight, please come check it out. Here, there's 18 hours left on the ticket sale window. We're ending the sale tomorrow at 4, and then we're done. That's it. We're sold out. We only have a few tickets, handful of tickets in each of the categories there. So please check it out at beyondmystic.net/conference. Don't ask Ken about UFO tech. He'll never shut up. Okay, Cliff. That's good advice. Thank you. Jay, let's talk about sex a little bit too. That wasn't in your, or at least not part of the Sheldon series that I've already watched. But you and I have tackled this subject before. And actually, let me just remove the YouTube feed for this one. So, folks, if you're watching us on YouTube, please come and see us here on Rumble or on the X feed for the remaining part of the No Holds Barred conversation. Let me just bring that link down in the live chat for you guys there. Okay, so let's remove YouTube. Yes, and remove. Yes. Yes. And just double check. The Rumble feed is still good. Yeah, so 7,000 there. There was a 5,000 on your side. Okay, so very good. Okay, so Jay, speak about that too. So in some of the research you were talking about there, Sheldon was talking about having these 5 different energies, female energies, for some of these yogis and enlightened people. Now, I'm not sure how we could we could probably do a 4-hour show on just that, but just very quickly now on a personal level, you've talked about creating your home, we've talked about your health, but let's talk about your sexual health also now and how that is set to change in a very dramatic way. On one hand, we have the old power structures of the last yuga crumbling, and that was the invention and the structures of the porn industry, the mechanisms by which humanity's views of sexuality was moved to a very, very dark place, conducive to maybe the dark magicians running the script as opposed to us running our own script and using that alchemical fire and energy to manifest and create into our own lives. And as we're moving into this new yuga of time, that now is one of the biggest opportunities for humanity, is to redirect that energy, depollute it, and then use it for our manifestation and where we want to go in this evolution. So I'm not sure how you want to break this down, but can you give me a little bit of background on why that's important, the teachings that you know about, and then how we can start applying some of those secrets of alchemy here for ourselves, but also for humanity as a whole moving forward in this new yuga of time. Jay.
So what people don't really realize is that alchemists always had a partner, and that partner was called the Sora Mystica, or the mystical sister. And it was usually the wife or girlfriend, and they would practice alchemy together. It was always that kind of relationship. And whether it was alchemy that collected dew in the morning, or alchemy that was interested in transmutation of elements, there was always this male-female thing going on. And so what happens is that when a male and female have sex face to face, and the male does not climax, but keeps everything within him, it builds up a plasma charge between the two people, and they hold it in coitus. And this plasma charge, especially if they're in love with each other, which they should be to do it, causes an immense field to be built around the couple. And this is also how you keep archons out, by the way, by having this kind of sex in your house creates this huge field. And the great British writer John Michel talks about how he noticed that the crops around a farmer's house were more vibrant and bigger the closer they got to the house. And the farmer was in a loving relationship with his wife, creating this field of love, which was having this effect on all the crops. And as the crops moved further and further away from the house, they dwindled and they were sparser. And he noticed that this was going on. And so in the old days,
Just a quick note. There's another book also that talks about how animals, wild animals, birds, bees, deer, and all that will also come closer to a person's house if that energy field is present, and stay very far away from it if it is not. I forget who the author is, but keep going.
that is exactly right. And you should see the number of animals that are around our house. It is amazing. We got elk, we got deer, bobcats, bears, coyotes, foxes, and they're all just constantly coming around our house. We see them through the windows all the time. And
Yeah.
I even saw a fox, no, a coyote and a bobcat walking together across our property. I'm like, what? But yeah, that's what happens. And you'll notice that I use happy and spiritual intertwined because I believe they are intertwined. So a happy house is a spiritual house, and a spiritual house is a happy house. So and when you have all this happiness, everything gets attracted to it. It's the anti-archon energy that's coming out. And so what was so important in the old days was to create a loving relationship with the opposite sex, for having children, but also because it created this shield around you, this incredibly protective shield, which the archons are destroying, are trying to destroy happy relationships. They want it all to be pornography, sex. You know, there's a famous book. Oh, I can't remember the name. I have it somewhere. It's a little pamphlet, and it's about a guy who went to go see he went to a Zionist conference like in 1965. And at the conference, they said that we're going to start turning sex into recreation. It's not going to be for love or having children. It's going to be for recreation. And he was so outraged by it that he wrote this little pamphlet, and I have it. And it all came true. And so they have purposely attempted to destroy the sexual relationships between men and women. I think it was Leonard Cohen. They're going to make sex between men and women illegal. One of his songs, he talks about it, right? And I think that's actually the goal, is to separate us so bad that we could never come together again. And we've got to stop that. We've got to realize that men and women are in sacred relationship, and that relationship has to be fulfilled. And if you do it, you will be happy. You will have sexual liberation in the best way possible. And so I encourage everybody to learn the tantric arts and practice tantra, because it really is a path to health and freedom. And I have a book, another rare book somewhere, which is it's a medieval sex guide. I'm not kidding you. It's a book of sketches of sexual positions from like 1410, right? And it's this fascinating book of what they were doing in those days. And they had a completely different view of sex than we have today. In the Middle Ages, people would just have sex in front of people while the family was eating. It was completely wild and crazy how different it was. I once read a biography of Leonardo, and Leonardo didn't know who his dad was. Nobody in his village knew who their dads were. Nobody. Their dads were. Everybody was having sex, and nobody knew who their dads were. It was like like today, more or less, right?
Right.
And out of all of this. Out of this melee came, one of the greatest minds of all time, right? Leonardo, who was.
What was that practice too? What was it called? It was like a monthly like masquerade or party where everybody would just wear a mask, go into town,
and then have sex.
Right.
I've actually been to them. They don't have sex anymore, but I was in France 20 years ago, and they had that party where the whole town puts on the masks, and they were going off into the woods. I saw them. Couples were going off into the woods to have sex, and to make only in the Kali Yuga would you make sex into something rote and mandatory and not spiritual. But now that we're moving out of that, we're rediscovering that it's possible for men and women to have a sacred relationship, and that's coming back and big time. But they don't want it to come back. Believe me, that scares them more than anything. Here's the thing: there are legends back in the Vedic texts that a little village would, they have a guy up on the hilltop, looking for any bandits or enemies coming down, right? And they would come down and say, "Oh, there's an army coming. It's heading our way. It's about 10 miles away." And what they would do is they would go to the leading tantric couple in the town or the village, and they would say, "We're in great danger. You've got to help us." And this is what the legends say. I don't know if it's true, but they would say that the couple would get into a tantric pose and go into a full tantric state, and they would make the village become invisible, and the army would just race right by and not even see it. And that they said they had that kind of power. This is, of course, pre-Kali Yuga. But the power of a man and woman working together is the most powerful duality that we can experience in this reality. And they don't want it. They don't want loving relationships. They don't want men and women getting along. They want, and they've done everything they can to break us apart from each other. And to a lot of times, a lot of things, it is working, but there's still enough couples that are determined to not go with the flow, that are still, having children and being in loving relationships. And honestly, there's really nothing like it. I mean, I feel sorry for all my male friends and my female friends who don't have a partner or someone they could share their life with.
Yeah. Somebody's asking, hey, I want to know more about this. Oh, Penny and Kaylee and I are doing a whole series on the Academy about what is sex. So we're going to get into some of those topics also for you guys. We're about a year into this idea and producing that for you guys. So it's coming. Just there's so many things here to discuss on the show. So another part of that. So as we're seeing now, it seems that we're right back into Rome, Caligula's time. We're seeing all of these news stories about these OnlyFans actresses who are doing 100 guys, then 1,000 guys, and all this stuff. Like, again, it's like peak insanity at the other end of the spectrum of what is actually dying, but they're still doing their very best now to promote that lifestyle, the money that comes with it, supposedly. In some cases, some of them do make a big money, but for the most part, they don't. It's just a huge degradation of the social fabric, but more so of the energetic field of humanity. Now, so you talked about these couples, you talked about creating this energy, this plasma energy field in these different positions. Now, what we haven't talked about, and you and I kind of broached the subject maybe in that first year, and I got deleted on YouTube for talking about this. This is why we just disconnected YouTube. But it was on the context of Amrita. So the exiler of life, here they're talking about immortality being one of those translations in Sanskrit. Now, these are the sacred waters that the Taoists also talk about at the second gate of the female orgasm. Now, this again, in a way, a taboo subject. In a way, it's a subject that turns off a lot of people. They don't want to hear about it, and it also brings a lot of derision and ridicule every time we have these conversations, because most people tell us, "Oh, JC, that's just porn. They're using props and blah 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 to make that happen on TV." And so now I think is the time to start having these conversations again, because this plays a critical role, in my view, and this is what I want to have your opinion on this, not just on the person's health, the couple's health, but then also here combating this energy field as we're moving towards this new yuga of time. I think it has a role there as well. And I'm not sure how far we can go into that in this particular episodes, but can you give me a little bit of context for the audience members, and then bring clarity on what that is and what that means to you, these terms, for the audience members who are like, what the fuck is JC talking about here tonight? And then talk about maybe somehow where people can, at least if they're not already involved with this creation of these energies and these sacred waters, as they're being called by the Taoists, how they can start that path to getting access to this, which is, again, one huge source of energy for humans to chart their own life and to create their own manifestations outside of this old matrix of control, of disaster, of negative energy, and destruction for the human race. Jay.
Well, I mean, maybe somebody like you can like help us start some kind of online educational process about this, because it's just been so misconstrued that no one actually understands what we're talking about. And yeah, they think that I'm talking about pornography when pornography is the exact opposite of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And having sex for recreational purposes is probably debilitating to the human body, for one thing, but also it's corruption. And so we have to have a liberating view of it without the societal constrictions that we've had for so long. And then we have to understand that when a man and woman are in coitus and they're creating friction without the sexual release, but the friction itself creates the plasma field, and and the slower and you go, and try to be careful here, the more you create the field. The field just grows and grows. And to be honest with you, I suppose that a single person can create such a powerful field on their own, but I've never been able to create that powerful field on my own outside of Tantra. So
Mhm.
I literally, so when you're living, like, say, in the country, like I do, um, your plasma field can grow and extend outwards quite a ways. And when you go to the city, it tends to constrict. And when you're like in an elevator with a bunch of people, it will just cling to the very outside of your body, hoping that it's going to get released at some point again. And so when you're in a tantric situation, um, and you have all the elements right, this plasma field can go out like a mile, literally, can go out like a mile. Huge. And you can't do that on your own. You need to have a Sora Mystica. You need to have a partner to do it. And uh, I, I, I can't describe it. And, it can only be experienced. It's sort of like trying to describe sex to a eunuch, right? It's like impossible. It's like trying to describe a mystical experience to someone who's never had one. You can't do it. It's just an impossible task. And so I can't convince people. And then all the waters have been muddied up by charlatans, mostly
Right.
guys who are claiming that they're some kind of tantric master, and all they're really trying to do is get laid. And they go from girl to girl, seducing them and telling them when actually they don't even know what they're doing. And so that has muddied up the waters. So Tantra is not about a one night stand. That's not what it is at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's Tantra is a couple exploring themselves for a long time without sex. before they do it. And then when they do it, it's sacred. It's done with meditation and prayers, and it's not hurried, and it's a wonderful, marvelous experience that the pornographers want you to never experience. They want you to just think of sex as this one shot thing, and then you're off to have a cigarette or a drink or whatever, and that's not what it is. And
Yeah.
so we've lost that in the Kali Yuga, but now we're getting it back.
So let me ask you a question. You keep you keep talking about muddying the waters, and my subject of Amrita has to do with these sacred waters, and they have been muddied, at least in our conversation about what is actual sex. So let me bring up a diagram for you guys. This is part
Yep.
of a teaching series that was brought up by Montauk Chiak.
Oh, yeah.
He's a Taoist master, and here he's talking about the Skene's gland. So it's circled here.
Right.
And he's talking about that being integral here to the second gate orgasm for the female and the waters that are created, which translates to Amrita at the beginning of this segment.
Yep.
And now, for many practitioners, even for the men, of course, a lot of this is incredulous; they don't understand. But for the women, this is happening inside of their body, and even them are struggling to understand where these sacred waters are coming from. Now, if you Google this, they'll say, "Oh, it's probably just urine," and they kind of want to put that aside as it's a nothing burger. Don't look here. There's nothing to this story. Whereas the women who are practicing this and who are achieving these second gates, they normally void just before the interaction. They void their bladder, and yes, to some extent, you can your bladder will start accumulating through your body, your normal process during your sexual intercourse, but not to the extent and the level of what is expelled at the second gate. And so a lot of these women are asking, where the hell is this water coming from? So there's a couple of theories there, and I wanted to have your take on this. Is it possible, and maybe it's a combination of both? In my view, and Mantak Chia is always a little bit aloof on this, and I'd love to have him on a show to ask him the direct question about where it comes from. He's suggesting that it could be part of the structured water that's in the body that through this process and this energy field realign, create this field, and have this explosion. So, for lack of better terms, you guys watching the show. And there's the other school of thought, some other Taoists who are thinking, actually, when you think about the yoni, it's actually a portal, and it's a portal to another place that is non-local. And now we're actually talking about plasma, that what is coming. And some researchers now analyzing these liquids are finding plasma. So yes, they're also finding traces of urine. We have to say it for the show, but there's other things in there that they do not yet understand. And so for the women, most of the questions I've had in the last number of years, having these open conversations to try to figure this out, they're asking, how is it possible that so much water can be expelled even after having avoided before the experience? Is it possible that it's non-local and it is plasma related? And is that why some of these old stories of kings searching these priestesses were using those waters from their priestess to extend their life because it was a plasma giving energy to extend their chi and all that? Speak to that a little bit, Jay.
That's pretty esoteric.
Right.
Yeah, it's very possible. I believe that is what Amrita is. It's kind of a liquefied plasma. You build up such a huge plasma charge in the act of Tantra that the Amrita is released and it tastes like roses or ambrosia or something like that.
Well,
And
what was that? That was priestess. I forget her name now. But the people who would come to taste that would say it would taste like peaches, and she would say you would come once a year to taste the waters of the peaches. But she was referring to that Amrita. Keep going.
yeah, and yeah, so I think that's what it is. I mean, I think that's what Tantra is it's build up of a plasma charge to induce chemical reactions within the two people that are doing it. And you know, the symbol of the heart, that's the perfect symbol for Tantra because you're united at the bottom, but you're separated at the top. And it's really necessary in Tantra, for instance, that you have to be staring at each other in the eyes while you're doing everything. And then what that happens is that transfers all this incredible plasma energy back and forth between and creates this huge charge. In my shows with Sheldon, we talked about doing meditations on eclipses. And I described the meditation I learned from my Taoist master, which is something that you also do in Tantra. And that is that you sit quietly and you draw the plasma into your eyes until it hits the back of your eye. That's on the in breath. And on the out breath, you shoot the plasma out. And when you're in Tantra, you're breathing together. So you're shooting the plasma out as she's taking it in, and then she's shooting it out as you're taking it in. So you create this like dance between the two. And it's really a celebration of duality.
Mhm.
So it's these art forms are coming back now. They've been long gone. And I want to say one other thing about yoga, tantra, tai chi, and Chinese medicine. Notice that there's no pedigree on any of this. We don't know where they came from. There's no
It was
books,
just dropped.
just dropped, and it's
Right.
all done. When it's
Yeah.
dropped, it's all finished. We
Right.
know the whole thing. The whole acupuncture system was just dropped on us. How they
Right.
figured it out, we have no idea. Where it
Yeah.
came from, we have no idea. Same with yoga, where it came from. Oh, it came from India. Oh, yeah, where? Where in India? Who wrote the book on it? Where did it come from? Nobody can tell you. Same thing with Tantra. How did we have this incredibly advanced teachings and we don't have any pedigree? And the answer is because it came from this super advanced civilization that disappeared at the last catastrophe, in which we, have been going downhill ever since, and now we're finally pulling out of it. And so, yeah, that's why we're so mystified by everything right now, because we don't understand where it came from.
Mhm. One of the practices you just had, I had some visual arts. Again, some of this is from Montauk Chia's work. I've attended some of his seminars and watched
He's
quite a few
awesome.
of his videos. Yeah. So going back to that breathing exercise you were just talking about, so you can do that, of course, with the eclipse, but just with your partner, you could start just a breathing exercise to where you're inhaling, your partner's exhale, and then
That's right.
vice versa, and you're creating this basically toroidal field of energy to where your energy is moving into your partner and then back into you. It's similar to this. It's a crude drawing. This is me who did the overlay to kind of show you guys, but dude, you're gonna get high on your own supply. Like there's
Yes,
nothing.
you are.
It's super super cool, and it doesn't take long, especially if your heart sinks within let's say the first 10 to 20 seconds of you being together and you start beating at the same heart rate. That
Yep.
field is just absolutely amazing. Again, it's such a huge departure from what we're seeing in the mainstream news. The last thing I want to ask you was the third gate. So let me see if we can bring up the third diagram. And this was like super cool to me. And then when I watched his presentation, he's talking about the third gate. So the first gate, people know clitoris. Second gate, the skin scan, we were just talking about. This third gate here opens up after the first two gates are open, and it opens this epicenter, what he calls an epicenter here, ballooning just next to the cervix, or just behind the cervix. But here, as you see, this changes position to where originally when you're lying down, it's pointing towards your belly button. But when
Yep.
this opens up, it moves basically in that
That's right.
position. And that was, to me, related in this Star Trek film. When they're looking at making this communication and they go back to get the humpback whales, that humpback whale, to make connection to that probe that's in space, it changes positions in the waters to make that channel the strongest
That's right.
and most potent. And that goes back to what you were saying at the beginning of the show, creating that field to source, basically. And that's where Tantra is, where all the magic is, basically, is in strengthening that field so that you have access to all of this information. Again, helping you plot your course, your creations, your manifestation in this life, as opposed to having the matrix of control do that for you. So,
Yeah,
do you want to
that's
go ahead?
that's what's so great about Tantra is that both of your spines are exactly vertical.
Mhm.
Okay, so that you're getting the outflow of the plasma energy is coming down through the top of your head. And now you got two people within close vicinity with their spines straight and and all the energy is coming down. And when it hits the base of the bottom chakra, it literally bounces back up and explodes across the whole field. And it's probably the most incredible alchemical knowledge ever known, and nobody's practicing it. And the ones that are practicing it wrong. So this really has to be brought back. I was going to do a series of videos on all of this a few years ago, but I went and talked to investors and like, oh, everybody's just going to think this is porno.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
no.
Well, I'd love to have you if you want to contribute to the series with Penny Kelly on our academy. I think it's time now, and we have a place and we have the audience where we can speak like adults about it. It was also in Avatar, the second Avatar. You remember when they go and get that little thing in the whale or whatever creature it is? They're talking about this same liquid here, but in a different form, and they're
No,
harvesting.
they go and they take the Amrita right out of the whale's pineal gland.
Right.
And then it's worth $80,000 back on Earth, this little vial, right?
Right.
It's like, that was the only good part of the movie, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I was like, wow, they managed to put that in there. But again,
that's
showing
true.
you how critically important this is to humanity. And some people watching the show, they might have tuned out. They were watching the first part, and this part is uninteresting. But this part is more important. It truly is, because this is the key. And I remember Penny Kelly saying this to me 5 years ago when we started this series and got deleted on YouTube. She says, when humanity understands the power they have with their sexuality, it's game over for the controllers. That's right. So it is very much critical at this time. Oh my God.
It is. And alchemy has a lot to do with this kind of sexuality. And people don't realize it because everyone thinks that alchemists are some weird guy in his basement. But if you actually look into the lives of alchemists, that's not what you find at all. If you go back in to look at the alchemists of 12th century France, they had gorgeous wives. And I mean, like drop dead, because I've been visited their homes. They have the statues of them, and and they're very sexual, very sexual, and but not pornography. It's sexuality. It's way different. Pornography is the darkest stuff imaginable. That's all I can say. And it's run by mafia and criminals, and stay away from pornography. That's all I gotta say.
Russell Brand just did a video with one of those ladies who just made the news there. Oh, what's her name?
Oh, really? I'd like to see that.
Yeah, what's her name?
I know who you're talking
about. Hold on, I'm looking for his channel.
Can't remember.
I know who you're talking about. Okay, so here we go. It's in. Is this right? Is this the right one? Yeah, this one here.
Yeah.
So he interviewed this young lady, and I thought it was absolutely profound. He did an amazing job, and I think he might have been the only guy who could have done this interview, in the sense that he starts laying on the track of his own errors, mistakes in his earlier career, depravity, using sexuality in the way that he did and all that. So he's like, I'm in no way, shape, or form in a position to judge you. He starts the interview like that, and he just set a baseline for having a conversation with her. And you could tell he's struggling through the whole interview to let her understand that her body is her temple, and that, you know, she's completely missing the point, basically, in all of this. And I'm not being mean of this young lady, too. It's just a sign of our times and how all of this has been distorted. And I think he's on to something. And some of the deep words of wisdoms that he shared in this interview, there were some critiques at the below the interview, because people were saying, oh, Russell talked too much. We wanted to hear the girl talk. But he needed to say all the things he said here, because this was very complex. And I think he almost hit the mark, or he hit the mark. It was very difficult to achieve. Anyways, I'll send you guys the link. If you guys haven't seen it also, you should go check it out. But we're having those conversations about the reality of this technology, this energy that is innate in each and every one of us, and how we've been so fooled, especially in these last yuga of time, to misuse it. And these conversations are just so important. And you could tell, like, once or twice during the video, he almost wanted to cry. And I was like, is he acting? Is it? No, he really meant it. He understands it. He's been on this huge awakening path, and he really felt for this young lady. And he told her at the end, when that changes, I won't spoil it for you here, but he says, remember that I said this. Right? So she's like, yeah, whatever, dude. Okay. But there was something very profound that he said there. I'm like, oh, every young woman should listen to this, specifically if they're thinking of getting on this path of this career, and especially now as the whole world is changing.
Yeah, I knew Russell Brand. I knew him when he was a socialist, and he was. I got in a big argument with him about socialism, 2012 maybe it was, and he was at the height of his career and everything at the time, and he came to Gaia, did a show, and I was really gratified to see his shift from the way he used to be to where he is now. And I'd like to see that interview actually.
I'll send you the link. Yeah.
Yeah, that poor girl. There was two of them that did OnlyFans, girls that did it. One did, I think, what, 500 in 24 hours. The other one did 1,000.
Something like that. I believe this one I believe this one was 100, and there's the other one who was 1,000. And I think now she's set also to beat the 1,000 record. That's how it's going.
But did you see her emotional breakdown after it was over?
Yeah, she did speak to that in the interview with Russell, and she says, of course, I had a 1-hour interview, and they spliced out and took that 2-minute when I was crying. And she says, after the fact, that she wasn't crying because she thought she had made a mistake or she felt degraded, but just that she was exhausted from the day of, all the physical activity. That's kind of how she broke it down. But again,
I wasn't the last 10 guys.
Right? No, I wouldn't want to be the second guy, like, let alone the last 10 or the last. But again, no judgment on the young lady here too.
No.
It's a sign of our time, and that's what Sheldon Moore was talking about in your video too. No judgment on any one of us. We've all made these mistakes. Our parents have all made these mistakes. We were in this. We have to understand how dark this Yuga time and how energetically it was controlling us or limiting us or gating us, so to speak, into these very lower frequencies. And that's the beautiful thing about that. Now we have the opportunity through these cycles of time and these energies to move up and to cycle up. And this is exciting. And I want to finish on this comment from the chat earlier tonight. Somebody was asking you, this one, Jawawa, JC, can humanity develop spiritually and technically enough so that the next descent into the lower yugas do not affect us? Jay, what do you think?
No, there's nothing you can do about it because it's blocking the central sun, the center of the galaxy. It starts getting blocked, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's necessary. I mean, you have to go through bad times to appreciate good times. You got to drop to the very bottom of the bucket to realize that you got to climb your way out of it. And so it all becomes a necessary part of the human experience to go through the darkness. And so we have to go through the darkness. And we're incredibly resilient. The earth is incredibly resilient. We've been taught that everything is finite and there's endings to everything and there's beginning and middles and ends, and none of it is actually true. We're on an oscillating cycle. Sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down. And fortunately for us, we're on an up cycle right now. And I really do believe that, like, a lot of things are going to go away. Like, probably most movies are going to go away. Things are going to disappear and reappear. And, who wants to go see a movie when you can get on X and watch the empire collapse? I mean,
right. In real time.
I want to watch a love story when this is so much more entertaining.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, I think it's the end of movies, not the end, but the reduction of it. I think fiction writing is already dropping. Nobody's reading anymore. Everything's just become internet. And so that's where it's going to go. And I don't know where these new art forms go. I was on Grok 3 yesterday, and I asked it where technology would be in 5 years, and Grok was having a really hard time answering me.
Yeah.
You know, it did not really, and every time I would ask it deeper questions, I could see it was getting frustrated with me because it couldn't answer the question because it didn't know. It doesn't know where it's going, and we don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
So wherever it's going to be incredible. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Where we're headed
Exciting
is a
time.
dizzying place.
Yeah. Cliff agrees with you. He says, yeah, challenge is required. No growth without it. No growth without that friction. But going back to your series, maybe I misunderstood this, but I want you to redirect it. It goes back to Jawawa's question about the next cycle downwards. Is it possible also, I think I understood this from Sheldon, that we are also spiraling closer to another star, which could mitigate some of those energies in the lower yugas on that next cycle. Did I understand that correctly? Did you get that also?
Yeah, but you're going to go into the yuga at a higher place on
Ah,
every turn.
right.
So
So we're cycling up, but
yeah,
still
we're
there's
cycling
okay.
up and then we go down, but we cycle back up and higher again at each
Right.
turn. So yeah, we're not going to end up like in the Kali Yuga that we just went through. There'll be a much different Kali Yuga than that one. And let's hope there's a lot less killing in the next one.
Right, that's for sure. All right, yeah, we'll probably have better night's sleeps. Speaking of having better night's sleep, let's hear what Dorothy Clay here has to say from Pure Bulk.
Guys, I'm Dorothy Clay with purebulk.com. I'm watching The Wacky Woo with Jean Claude and guests. As a special thank you to the loyal Beyond Mystic viewers, I would like to offer you a 15% discount on Cliff High's Pure Sleep. It promotes restorative sleep and helps rebuild and re-energize the body. Go to purebulk.com and use coupon code WACKYWOO and get your Pure Sleep today. Now, back to the show.
Back to the show. Thank you, Dorothy. And Dorothy is also, guys, she just announced 3 days ago, she's coming to the Beyond Mystic conference in Ottawa. So she's going to have a booth. They're going to share some space with the C60 folks. So we'll have you covered to take care of your body there and your mind and your soul. And of course, Jay Weidner is going to be giving the keynote on alchemy. Can you give us a hint of what you're preparing in terms of alchemical secrets you're going to be giving to the conference there in Ottawa, Jay?
Well, I touched on a lot actually already on this show. The kind of what we're doing is a confluence of knowledge that's coming together, and we're realizing some very evident truths about the world. And I'm going to be taking us down a path to show not just where alchemy came from, but where this is going to take us in the future in the coming yuga cycles that are coming, and how we're going to be able to live a lot longer. That's really in alchemy, there's two goals. One is enlightenment, and one is to live longer. Actually, it's to live longer and then enlightenment, because you got to live longer to get enlightenment. And so the first goal of the alchemist is to spend a long time here on this realm and plane to get the enlightenment. And so health is first, and then enlightenment is second. And I think that's where we're all going to go as a collective. We're going to get healthier now that RFK is in office, and we're going to then get a hold of our health, and then enlightenment will come, and we will become a better species. I believe we're going to finally move into the stars, become a star-faring race, and all of the rest is just going to happen just by us working every day to achieve these goals.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Ottawa, Jay. Guys, please join us there. There's 18 hours left on the ticket window for the physical tickets. Handful of left in every category. We're almost sold out. But if you cannot join us in Ottawa, please join us for the online streaming pass. Of course, you'll have access to all 3 days, the keynotes, the workshops, the parties in between also. So please check it out. There's a few more tickets here as well for the online streaming pass. Jay, before we go, we had some prizes to give away tonight from Carla at Ascension Organites. She's worked up these amazing new Feng Shui Organite towers. We're going to give this one away this evening. This one, I believe, is for the family Bagua. Do you know about Baguas, and are you using some of this Feng Shui in your home as well, Jay?
I don't know about Bagua. No, I don't know about that one.
So in Feng Shui, you basically break down the quadrants of your home.
Oh, yeah.
And and to increase the energy in those homes, you can address them with specific colors and different
Yep.
tactics. And so she's created these beautiful organite towers here for each of the bagwas. We're giving
Nice.
this one here tonight, and we're also giving away one of these new tarot card natural candles. Tonight is the Empress Black Tea Iris Cedar Wood. I love this candle too. Speaking of making your home pleasant or unpleasant for the archons, you might want to get one of these candles. So Jay, do you want to test the audience members tonight to give away these two gifts with
Sure.
questions about either something you've talked about here tonight, could be a keyword, a person, a place, a date, a concept, short 1 word or 2 word answer we're looking for. What would be your first question for the audience?
What do I call the force, the invisible force in the universe that has a positive effect on us?
Invisible force in the universe that has a positive effect on us. Okay, while we wait for that to populate there in the live chat, folks, of course, if you haven't seen the latest 2 documentaries, I recommend this one, jfkx.org. This is fascinating now also that Trump is going to be declassifying this, so we're going to have more information of that coming out soon. Jay and I will be doing another show as soon as those informations are released, and see how that ties in also to his amazing documentary. So if you haven't seen it, jfkx.org, and also, of course, the Clockwork Shining Cubics Odyssey #3, which was absolutely fascinating. Talking about all of this MK Ultra that we've been going through individually and collectively in our world. So you guys want to go check out those 2 documentaries if you haven't
Both
seen
on
them already.
Amazon.
Now, and also
And
here
Apple
for
TV.
Canada. For Canada, also, do you have
Apple TV and Vimeo. So if
Vimeo
you're
for
in Canada, you can watch it on Vimeo. Just go to Vimeo, type in A Clockwork Shining, and you'll get it.
Yeah, it was very good. Now, you're working on something else coming forward here. Can you share that with the audience while we wait for the answers to populate?
Yeah, I'm doing a 8-part series called The Invisible Universe, and I'm working with Helena Resner, cousin of Trent Reznor, by the way, of 9 Inch Nails, and we're doing a really, really good series on all of this. The precursor of my talk in Ottawa is sort of like the prologue to the documentary series. So it's all working together, and it's going to teach everyone a whole new view of the supernatural and invisible energies and how to achieve health and happiness.
Oh, awesome. It's going to blow your mind, guys. I swear to God. And of course, we'll invite Jay when he's ready, and we'll be happy to interview him on it and help share the information with you guys. Jay, let me know when to stop the chat here. We'll pick the first winner. Stop. Okay, hold on. There you go. My cursor is on natural swimmer. Yes, that's the correct answer. Plasma. If you go to the top of the page here at beyondmystic.net and you fill out the tech support form, just let us know you're the winner. We'll have Carla ship that out to you ASAP. And the second prize we're giving away, of course, is this beautiful Empress candle. Jay, you have a second question for your audience members.
What is the type of sacred sexuality that I was talking about?
Okay. You guys have to be paying attention if you want to win the prizes here tonight. So type of sexual, how do you call it? What did you say? Say it again.
What is the name of the sacred sexuality that I was talking about?
Okay, very good. You want me to stop right now? Hold on. There you go. My cursor is on Crypto Farmer Tantra. Yes, that's the correct answer also. Crypto Farmer, I haven't seen you in a while. Yes, so send us an email, and congratulations to you both. Jay, what's coming up also here on your YouTube channel here? Are you interested in interviewing more cool people like Sheldon Moore here coming up?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff lined up. I'm really going to gear it up, I guess. I'm kind of jealous that Cliff High's putting out so much content that I'm going to start going in competition with him. And
competition is good, Jay.
Yeah, it's good, exactly. And but yeah, I am. I'm stepping up the game. I've been really busy with all my films, but they're kind of going to get behind me here. And so in a couple of months, I'll probably start producing a lot more content. Stop talking about this kind of stuff too. I'm not really interested in politics or anything. I'm more
Yeah,
interested in the spiritual awakening of the
right.
human race than I am in
Yeah.
grungy politics and that kind of stuff.
We're past that stuff now. We have to
Yeah.
go like that. That was the whole point. We have to go through it, but now we have to decide what we want to create moving forward. And to do that, we have to learn all of these sacred mysteries. And I thank you, Jay, for your work in the last number of decades doing just that. And I hope that these next decades will be more fruitful in the sense that the energies are conducive to that information flowing out. And I hope you deserve the credit, that you get the credit that you deserve for all of your work. And I hope that the audience members will join you also here on your YouTube channel at Reality Check, and they can also find the rest of your work and your books on jweidner.com. Jay, before we go to last minutes, words of wisdom again. I always ask this because we have a shifting field of energy every time we meet. There's always new struggles and challenges in front of us, always new opportunities. But through some of those changes and the rapid rate of change, often, and maybe that's the archonic thing, trying to keep us into these older, lower energies. Some of our viewers, including myself, sometimes we fall into some of this fear or trepidation with all these changes, and maybe sometimes the unknown, right? It's normal to be human. We have those feelings. What is your word of wisdom or advice on how to deal with that here moving forward? Let's end on that, Jay.
Well, nature, um, nature loves courage, and it removes barriers to the courageous. And so you have to have courage to stand up to it and not have fear. And when you do, I guarantee I'm right about this, uh, nature removes all the boundaries and the barriers. And it's so excited that there's a courageous person around that it just does everything it can, the universe does, to remove all the things and help that courageous person accomplish its goals. So, take a deep breath. Don't be fearful. There's no such thing as death. So you're not going to die. And you will die, but you're not going to really die. Your spirit will go on. And never, never, ever let your critics tell you that you're a bad person or that you don't know what you're doing. Tell them they're full of shit and to go away.
Right. I love it. Just be matter of fact about it. That's
Yep.
great advice. Thank you so much, Jay. Wow, we have 14,000 or so watching live tonight between the two live channels. Guys, give us a like if you like the information here from Jay. Leave us a comment. Also, first of all, your takeaways from some of this amazing energy and frequency field of information we're sharing with you guys tonight. And also, if you have questions for the next time Jay's on the chat, I take care of reading those comments very carefully as we script and develop the next shows moving forward. So a big thank you to all of you watching this evening. This was the Wacky Woo for February 23rd. Join me again tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern for the next edition of the Beyond the News with Janine. I love you guys. Have a great evening, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Yeah.